Yeah, if you're not speaking, you can feel free to mute. Hi, everyone. Awesome to be here on this last event series of social DeFi, Bitcoin DeFi, and today we will be covering DAOs, Decentralized Autonomous Organization. So first of all, I'd like to say huge thank you to the bitfwd team that has been pulling it off and doing amazing things to make this event series happen. So thanks Annette, thanks Shirley, and everyone else who contributed. Thanks to all the speakers that have generously been joining to share their insights from their DAO entrepreneurial journey today. I'm Daniel, founder of bitfwd, and today I'll be your host. So we've been running bitfwd for the past 5 years, working on crypto community open source ventures, doing venture building, doing some consulting activity in the past couple of years, doing some investment as well. And yeah, today the focus is on decentralized autonomous organizations. And we have some globally leading people here in this space, including Matan, that has infected me with the decentralized autonomous organization bug a few years ago. And since then, it's difficult for me to think about anything else. And fun fact is that Matan lives in the same village I grew up in most of my life in Israel. So I'll give a quick background of Matan, which is very difficult to cover with his very unique career until becoming a DAO entrepreneur. Matan is a PhD in string theory and physics and has done several entrepreneurial stints in crypto and collaborative organizations and activism before starting DAOstack, which is one of the most interesting decentralized autonomous organization protocols. And there's quite a few interesting experiments that are running on this protocol for the past few years. And I'll hand it over to you, Matan, to share a little bit more background of your DAO entrepreneurial journey and share your keynote. So over to you, Matan.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you very much. Lovely to be here. Let me just try to share my screen. I think it's here. And please do. It says I need to change something in the setting. Let me do this. I think it will not be able to record the content of your screen until it's quit. Okay, so it tells me that I need to change settings in the Chrome in order to allow that. So I need to quit the Chrome and enter back. So I will enter back in a moment.
Okay. Okay. I guess while we're waiting for Matan, anyone participated in DAOs from the audience and you want to drop in something on the chat that can be a good question to ask the speakers afterwards? So after the speakers will go over their talks, we will have some panel session where we'll have a chance to ask some rather provocative questions that you don't get to ask people usually. Some of them will be a little bit pushy and challenging, so feel free to drop anything that you have in mind. That would be great. Speakers included. And Matan is joining again.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, can hear you.
Okay, I think now it works. Okay, yeah, it works. Magic. Cool. So thanks, Daniel. Yeah, my background, as you said, like I've been in the academy for many years, doing PhD and postdoc research in string theory, and then in parallel to that, I've been doing social activism, mostly locally. But my main interest was how to sort of like cooperate better or organize better. So I founded the food cooperative. And it was a very enlightening experience, but I was really interested in the question like how it would make possible to cooperate in thousands of people effectively. And then I had another idea to make a decentralized ride-sharing app, so I started to work on it. And via that, I discovered the blockchain It was exactly the months when Vitalik presented his white paper, and then it all clicked together, and I realized that that's how cooperative organizations going to function in the future. And basically, just as you said, it was a bug, it was a virus I couldn't get rid of. I quit the academy, and basically since then, for the last 7 years, I'm full-time on this. So this is my journey. Yeah, so I totally agree that with the gist that the present is DAOs, and we are, I think gradually we're making it to the mainstream. So this will be the topic of my talk. So first I want to start saying that many people say DAO, and I think they're meaning different things, and still I even think that they don't yet people not yet aware of how so many different things DAOs are. Okay, so I want to argue that DAOs is really so many things, and we're just scraping the ice right now, just scratching the ice. So let me give you quickly just some examples. So DAO is an open business. This is exactly what happened when we formed the project that called Lazuz for the ride-sharing project. We were a team of like 5 people, but we really weren't interested to form a company. It was not our main job. We all had a day job. We also wanted to open up this project. We wanted more people to participate. We also wanted to make it an open business in order to align incentives with the users. So we really wanted to make an open business. So this is a DAO, for example. DAO is also a spontaneous collaboration. So many times I had this incident that I had like a really nice idea that I wanted to work on. I could spend, I was very busy in my day job or in my day project, but I could spare like 2, 3, 4 hours to write a 1-pager or 2-pager and just share my idea with the community. And imagine that someone else just picks it up, makes another contribution, another person makes a contribution, and gradually you're becoming a spontaneous collaboration. It's also a DAO. Professional collective. I just spoke with someone, they are facilitators for companies' events, and they're like a big group of facilitators, and they start to share resources between themselves and also build a shared brand. And so it's forming organically as a collective in which each of the persons in the collective runs their own business, but they share some resources and also contribute back to the collective. So DAO is also a professional collective. DAO is user-owned business. Most of DeFi DAOs today, what they really do is share the ownership of the project, of the business, with their users or their supporters. In DeFi case, it's the liquidity providers. And then really they're aligning the interest better and providing a much faster growth. So DAO is also a users-owned business. And DAO is a business alliances. I will skip that for now. And I also want to focus more on the last one, saying that DAO is a social collaborative network. So what is a social collaborative network? Actually, my plan was not to talk about it, was just to show you. But I just realized now, a few minutes ago, that I cannot share screen. I cannot actually join this tool, the meeting tool. I cannot join from my mobile. So rather than that, I just quickly took some screenshots. So this is a live app. It's called Common, which we developed, which we just launched on the app stores 2 weeks ago. So this is just screens from my iPhone. So you can see the different commons. Most of them are right now are testing commons. We're just launching a few pilots this week. So these are the commons they can find out. These are my commons, basically. And then I can get into the common. So commons, you can ask, what is a common? So common is something like a Facebook group, but with funding, and truly decentralized. So think about thousands of people, or maybe hundreds of people, they want to collaborate together and promote their shared causes. And I'll give you a few examples. But briefly, just showing you what it is, so you can get into the common. You can see the members of the common. You can see the discussions, the posts that people place. Inside the post, there is a real-time chat. So it's something like Telegram chat, group chat attached to each post, something between Facebook and Telegram. You can see proposals. You can make proposals. You can vote on proposals. You can chat on proposals. And if a proposal is approved, automatically the funds are being transferred to the proposer. You can see the history of proposals, and so on. So now you can ask yourself, okay, but what is a social collaborative network? What do you do with that? So I would argue that even just that segment is so big, is so huge. There are so many kind of commons. For example, common hoods. We are now opening a few pilots. Imagine a neighborhood or a village or a small town or a neighborhood in a large city that wants to run a shared wallet. They want to collect funds from the members of the common. They want to manage the funds together to run events, to improve the public spaces, to support families in needs in the neighborhood, and so on and so forth. So this we would call commonhoods. There are common agendas, like common with an agenda. For example, we are right now, there is a common running on the platform just starting that is promoting the call for strengthening the democracy in Israel. There's another one that we're now starting to pilot with an agenda to plant food forest around the country, and so on and so forth. So these are common agendas. Common impact. Sorry, these are common impacts. I made a mistake. Common agendas is more like common with an agenda, like a topical agenda. For example, we're running a pilot. The LGTB community in a town is running a common. So this will be common agenda. And common impact is the one that make impact. So political commons, environmental commons, and so on. Common unions would be commons for people who, for example, professionals, very similar to the one I mentioned before, but a lot of professionals who want to promote their shared causes together. Common vibes is more for hobbies. We thought to run a common for all of the contact dancers in the country. Common aid would be a large collective that want to support different segments, for example, families in need after the Corona crisis, and so on and so forth. So there's many, many different cases, almost all of which are actually now starting piloted. So now the other side of my talk is, do you think all these different DAOs feed a simple app? Do you think all these types would use many different apps? Do you think there will be like many different apps serving different kind of DAOs? And are you willing to bet on it? So I want to suggest that what you need for that is to have a modular but consistent DAO platform. So it needs to be modular. It needs to be able to change. You need to be able to extend it a lot, but also it has to be simple and consistent and just at the UX level that users are expecting and need and requiring. So I'm arguing that this is the future of DAOs, a modular but consistent DAO platform. And that's exactly what we're building with Alchemy. So Alchemy is basically one slick integrated platform. We've been running a pilot for the last 3 years, but now we are completely upgrading it from scratch, basically. So it's going to be a whole new platform. So it will be one slick integrated platform, so it will feel like an app. However, you'd be able to extend it and install your favorite DAO apps and plugins very easily, but still, no matter which DAO app you're installing, you would still have one slick integrated platform. Around that, there will be an open plugin developer ecosystem that any developer has a new idea, or a company needs a new functionality that doesn't exist, you can just develop it and integrate it. And then there will also be an App Store business model. If you're a developer and you're making plugins, you can upload them to the App Store, to the DAO App Store, and make business out of that. So, yeah, I totally agree with the original gist, and I think the present is DAOs, and I also trying to argue that the present is DAOstack. So thank you very much.
Cheers. Thanks for sharing, Matan. We'll definitely have quite a few questions, especially given the amount of experiments that you've seen in the DAO space. I think is something that is probably second to none. So we'll definitely, in the panel section, get to ask you some questions about it. And cool. I guess for our next speaker, I'd like to invite Eyal. So Eyal is a founder of DeepDAO, which basically uncovers a lot of data that is currently growing exponentially in the DAO space, and naturally, like, with the growth of the crypto industry, the DeFi space. Eyal has been working in product and tech companies like Apple Computer in the US, and has been an activist himself as well. And since last year that I met Eyal, I think that my exposure to data about DAOs has been growing all the time, and that's why I feel privileged to be working closely with Eyal, and all the insights that that he shares are just amazing. The kind of things that are happening currently in DeepDAO are basically, you can see the future from the products that Eyal is developing. So without further ado, Eyal, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Daniel. It's been a great cooperation for a long time. And thanks, Matan, for showing us Common. It looks great. And in fact, we're totally on the same page. I think that the future of DAOs is actually the present of DAOs, and that many of the use cases that we've been thinking about are already in existence, and many more are coming up. I'll share my screen and try to show you a little bit of the data that we're collecting and what we see on DeepDAO. Can people see my screen? Anyone?
Yeah, we see.
Okay, terrific. So what we do on DeepDAO is, this is the first iteration, and we're collecting data currently from 91 DAOs, and there are many more DAOs coming up. And what we've seen in the past year is really a huge growth. The total AUM, the total amount of money that is being managed on the DAO ecosystem currently is $645 million. When I started aggregating the numbers in July, I think it was like 23. So that's close to 20x growth over the past 6 months. And I think last year or 2 years ago, when all of us started doing anything in DAOs, there were maybe a few hundreds of people participating in DAOs, and now we have over 13,000, and the number keeps on growing. And the AUM was maybe 10 million or even less than that. And when we start scrolling down the list on DeepDAO, we see many use cases that are already happening. So, for example, the top DAOs here are team funds. These are teams that did crowd sales, and they are managing their money in DAOs. So there are 3 DAOs with over $100 million, which is really a lot when you think of that money, over $100 million, is being managed by a community. 30 people here, 15 here, 13 here. Over here, the number 4 DAO with 80 million has over 3,000 people who are eligible to participate in voting, participating in the governance of this community. And we have DXDAO, which is really like a company. They own products, and they have a pretty clear structure and hierarchy and a very elaborate governance. And then we scroll down the line. There are a couple of VC DAOs, Metacartel Ventures and DeLao, both of them with $8 million and $12 million. And then there's gaming DAOs like Decentraland and Aavegotchi over here with $5 million. And so on and so forth. There are activist DAOs that I'm sure Matan and I love equally. There's Curio DAO, which is a DAO for dealers of collecting rare cars, and Wiren DAO, which is a DeFi DAO, and so on and so forth. And the data that we collect on these DAOs is very interesting. Let's see, for example, the DXDAO, which is on DAOstack, the platform that Matan has founded. So DXDAO is a very strong DAO overall. It's number 6 in total funds managed, number 4 in number of members, and number 2 in number of proposals. And you can see on DeepDAO which coins are being held by the DAO, and then you can go and you see the proposals. So proposals are really like what the shareholders are doing, what the people who are in this DAO thinking of, and what are they voting on. So you can actually scroll down and see all this kind of data. And then you can see what is going on in the governance of the DAO. And we can go quite deeply. For example, this entity, which has the most voting power, controls almost 9% of the voting power. And when you start scrolling down, you see that the number 10 entity is 2.37 and so on and so forth. You can really understand the governance here. I'm not going to go into too many details, but I want to show a couple of more screenshots from stuff that we're developing. So we believe that we need to also personalize what's going on in the DAOs. So we're creating a leaderboard of people who are involved in DAOs. And excuse my voice. So we're sorting the people who are involved in DAOs by the number of DAOs they're participating in. We can see that Peter Pan is in 19 DAOs and created 112 proposals and participated in 157 votes. And then we can scroll down and see more of the stars of the DAO ecosystem. And for each of these profiles, we go deeper, and we created a profile that is similar to what you can see on, for example, on LinkedIn. And you can see the actual experience, the actual work experience of this person in terms of which DAOs are they participating in and what is the proposals they're involved in and what are the votes they're involved in. And this entire thing is creating a very human environment, which is, I think, really important for our field, because we need to increase adoption of people. And I think this is really the main challenge that we're facing as a DAO community. Is how do we increase the level of participation, and how do we go from the bubble of a few thousands of people to indeed the tens of thousands and millions of people that Matan and others are designing the systems for. And I think this is what we're seeing in the past 2 years, the exponential growth. And what I think is going to happen in the next few years is that it will continue to grow. So thank you. This is my introduction.
Thanks, Eyal. That's already like a sneak peek there to some confidential information. I don't know if I would approve it if you would suggest before. I would probably think that it's a bit early to show the world the advanced stuff. Anyhow, lucky people got some sneak peek for awesome products. So our next speaker is actually from New York, and it's 4 a.m. in New York right now. And it seemed a little bit not nice to disrupt her sleep. So Pri Desai from Open Law, or the Law, is a lawyer that practices basically how to build compliant infrastructure for DAOs and the kind of legacy world of law and finance. And in the past couple of years, they worked on a framework to allow a DAO to invest just like a VC firm. And there has been already numerous investments that the DAO has made. And quite a lot of what Pri is doing is patching all these legal and compliance processes between the legacy world to the cyber wilderness, as I like to say, and a lot of cat herding in organizing communities and making basically all this transition from the legacy world to the new DAO world possible. So because it's 4 a.m. in New York, we won't be able to have a live talk, but she prepared a recording, and Annette will briefly share with us the recording. So Annette, whenever you're ready, feel free to hit play. And let's see if it works.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for having me. I'm so sorry I couldn't make this like amazing panel with amazing panelists on DeFi and DAOs, but I did want to kind of share a little bit about what we're doing here with the DAO and this whole ecosystem of different DAOs we're creating. So just, I guess, to give a little bit of background about myself, I lead operations for a project called OpenLaw. OpenLaw has, created a protocol which actually wraps smart contracts in real-world legal agreements. And last year we started thinking about DAOs, with the launch of Moloch DAO and the Moloch DAO grants. We had, subsequently be thinking about ways we could incorporate, Moloch DAO and extend that in the for-profit venture context. So, the team got together, extended those Moloch DAO contracts for V2, which thereby created, at least on the DAO framework smart contract side, like a for-profit venture DAO model. So we kind of wrapped those V2 smart contracts with legal contracts, created a limited liability company or an LLC, and renamed that the DAO. The DAO is very much in the spirit of the original DAO in 2016, which was an incredible idea and raised, I think, upwards of 160 million at the time. Unfortunately, there was a technical vulnerability, to say the least. But this fundamental core idea of pooling capital together and distributing that capital in a democratic way is super interesting and could be applied across various industry verticals. And so, the first vertical we came together to create was the DAO, and the DAO is a for-profit venture DAO. We launched at the end of April, kind of heavy into the bear market, which is crazy considering, how far the ecosystem has really run since that point. But we launched, collected capital and members. The members really range, from protocol founder, operator types to VCs, whether that be crypto VCs or traditional VCs, and also just other, like active folks in the DeFi ecosystem, people who've just been on the ground floor supporting Ethereum, people who, ETH Foundation, others who really just kind of want to see the growth and have been following projects and supporting them individually, wanted to really kind of be a part of this hive mind collective of making decisions. And that group, I think, because of their varied background from, art focus to DeFi, has really picked projects across every, blockchain industry. So like our first project was in the privacy space through Tornado Cash. Our second was in the NFT digital art space with Super Rare. And then from there, there's just been like a slew of various DeFi projects, everything from, options to DEXs and the like. And then, beyond that, like starting to think about, what the future looks like. So this kind of cross section of DeFi and NFTs that we saw with, projects that the DAO has supported, like Charged Particles and Avagachi, as well as this emergent kind of social community token space with the support to Roll. And again, that's another area where a lot of DAO members are interested. And I mean, since we launched, of course, there's been tons of projects that they've backed. I think it might be over 30 projects at this point. So things are, definitely moving pretty quickly. I think, since launch, it's just been a continuous hunt for amazing projects, founders really digging through ETH global hackathons, the Gitcoin kernel program. Like, people generally are on top of it. Some people, being in the industry, I guess, kind of helps understand what's missing and what projects that come along that can kind of fit in that hole that's missing. And so there's quite a bit going on that end, and there's different subjects that many of the members are interested in. So One that was the members, there's definitely a cabal of members within the DAO that are interested in like the NFT, digital art, digital property space. And I think at one point a member mentioned wanting to purchase an NFT on behalf of the DAO, which kind of continued this discussion of, well, maybe, you know, should we start purchasing NFTs? Like this was, you know, over the summer, and it was a broader discussion of maybe why don't we create like an NFT collective fund and an entirely, you know, different DAO in the NFT space. And so that's really where the idea was born. And we, you know, as part of Open Law, incubated, and the DAO incubated another DAO called Flamingo, which is specifically focused in the NFT space. And, you know, that has gained tremendous, you know, success. It was launched in October, different members, everything from, you know, digital artists to founders to, you know, avid, both traditional art collectors and crypto art collectors. And I think, you know, that's also similarly like this interesting, you know, group of people, all different types of NFTs, everything from digital art to collectibles to metaverse land, et cetera. And so, I mean, everyone has their own niche and is really honed in on that and educating other people. So it's a great network and great community of people who are just ready to dig in and learn. You know, so both the DAO and Flamingo are structured really similarly. So, you know, that fundamental idea I was referencing of pooling capital together and then democratically voting on that is all based through the Moloch DAO extension. So, you know, there's a proposal period of 7 days, people vote. Then there's, you know, the ability to rage quit if someone doesn't necessarily agree with the direction of the fund or a specific project or NFT that's purchased. You can take any undeployed capital and leave. And it's, so in a way, it's a very fluid structure where people can come in and out as they so please. You know, both of these also are limited liability companies that are based in Delaware. So each member of both the DAO and Flamingo are limited to their own contribution when it comes to any liabilities that may arise. And I mean, I think, you know, beyond that, you know, we've just started out with the DAO, which has been incredibly successful and is a wonderful group of people, and then that incubated the Flamingo. But, you know, based on some of these conversations, there's just new creative, you know, conversation and ideas that have just flowed organically. You know, on the DAO side, there's, you know, ideas of possibly creating another DAO where people can pool capital and take different liquidity positions in different protocols. You know, there's an idea of possibly edging into the social token space with a DAO so members could support different creators. There's, you know, different little areas that, you know, as they develop, there is a pool of capital where people can vote and support different aspects of it. You know, it's unique to the NFT space, and Flamingo is really this idea of, you know, once you acquire this piece of digital property, what do you do with it? You could fractionalize it, split it amongst the members. You could almost create like an index around a bundle of NFTs. You could tokenize the entire collection. You could display it in a digital gallery. Of course, this is all up to the members, but point is, I mean, it really is pretty tremendous with some of like the governance and decisions, you know, the members can make. And I think that's really where the fund's going to arise. You know, with the DAO, they have continued to push the needle on the projects, but also thinking about where they can go next and what's the next possible DAO they'd like to incubate. And so I think that this idea of a community-led or user-generated finance is kind of increasingly what we're seeing in DeFi. So this notion of kind of you being your own bank, and I know it's a little bit cliche, but there is some level of flexibility with these protocols. And I think that's why people enjoy them is, I mean, we hear this, but there's not like much of a middleman you need to interface with. You really just need an internet connection and like a desire to jump into community or jump in to learn a specific DeFi protocol, and you can engage with it and interface with it very directly. I mean, you download, you know, purchase some crypto, download a MetaMask, and like you can jump into Aave or some other protocol that exists. There's really not much holding you back. And so I think similarly, like we're seeing that with DAOs too. If you can find your community, you can jump in and really start making decisions as a group. It's an extension of what we've seen in Web 2 in many ways. Like we have these groups in Discord, in Reddit, even Twitter, for that matter. There's different, broader communities, and, crypto Twitter being one of them, or other types of Twitter communities, Reddit, subreddits, etc. And like, yeah, I think that's pretty interesting as far as sharing information, learning. I mean, frankly, the unlock of information the internet has provided is like no other. It's like any library on steroids, really. And so trying to like extend that beyond the information sharing is where all this DeFi DAO stuff comes in. So imagine, setting up a subreddit or a Discord group into a DAO and making financial decisions as a group. I think, most DeFi protocols are in some sort of DAO format at this point, or wanting to DAOify and decentralize to the community at some point. So, we're going to see more and more of this. And what I think is so neat about DAOs and DeFi is you do have that like user-generated finance and user-generated decision-making, but you also kind of get to meet all these interesting people who are like-minded and make decisions with them and learn from them. Watching other folks kind of just get to know each other and work together on the side on various projects is something that I've noticed on the Lao side, but also on the Flamingo side. So it's interesting to kind of just see the social component of having these people just meet all over the world and have like entirely different worldviews and come together and make the best decisions. And I personally can say that at least my opinion is that the Lao portfolio is just, the projects are all amazing. The founders are all incredible. I feel like I've met at least most of them, and they're just really driven, all come from interesting backgrounds. So we're in a pretty exciting time right now. And we're in a space where DAOs are going to be like, there's going to be protocol DAOs, there's going to be DAO supporting protocols like what we're building here, DeFi protocols and beyond. And, what's interesting about DAOs too is like they can connect to one another. One DAO could be a member of another, like through some sort of electronic means. And that's something that you don't see in modern organizations or traditional organizations. So having this like web of different DAOs connected to one another, I think is also going to be kind of fascinating. It's like a new take on fun to fun. It's quite literally fun to fun. So, I think that the future of DeFi DAOs, what we're doing here with the Lao, is really bright. And, again, if you have any questions on what we're doing with the Lao, Flamingo, or, what we're building as far as these future DAOs and DAO frameworks, feel free to reach out at pri@openlaw.io or at Pri Desai at Twitter. Thanks, everyone.
All right. That was good, kind of a lot of load of information from the Lao and the journey that Pri has been working on. Awesome that she could record it. We'll thank her later. And our last speaker before we move to the Q&A and panel section. So Ruby Wu. Ruby was a Bitcoin and crypto OG in China. Some of the earliest activities in the crypto space in China since the first half of the decade, last decade. So I know that Ruby was involved in quite a few of those initiatives and supported several other ventures. I think that first time we met was about 3 or something years ago. And in the past couple of years or so, Ruby was focused on community coordination and very curious researching different capital coordination in DAOs and new ways of doing investment, and has been quite active on early stage impact venture building in China mostly, and working with global projects as well. Actually, we put together the first ever DAO event in China, in Shanghai in 2019. So it was Ruby, myself, and Jessie, which is not a part of tonight. Hopefully we'll get her to share her experiences another time. So over to you, Ruby.
Great. Thank you so much, Daniel, and thank you for everyone for having me here. I'm Ruby, and a quick introduction for me is that I am a DAOist, and I'm working with several DAO organizations working in the direction of investment and incubation. And also I have a community running organization. We work for industrial and project research, and also community running for the blockchain projects in China. And also we have a technical research and engineering development team in blockchain called AS Research, and it's also organized in the DAO format. So and the first one for investment and incubation, the organization is called Incuba Alpha, and we have been actively investing in projects in DAOs and DeFi with the belief that DeFi is the future of financial system, and DAO, on the other hand, is the future of collaboration. So those two directions, we believe, are two key infrastructures for people to organize human capital and capital in the coming digital world with the support of blockchain. And we are happy to see that the digital world, we believe that will coming, is already really, really close to us. We see really good development of DeFi in the past year, and we also see a really good attention and development into DAO area in the past year. I remember that we were just doing the first DAO event in China back to 2019. This was only a few people and a few projects working in the DAO areas, and people are still trying to figure out what DAO is actually referring to. But now we'll see that most of the DeFi projects, thanks to the fair launching and the informal stuffs and the support of the blockchain, all starting to organize their own DAOs. And we see some good signs in DeFi and DAOs, and also see some bottleneck here in DAOs. So I would like to share several trends we observed, especially from my point of view in China. And the first one is that we see more and more projects starting to organize their communities and project operations in the format of DAO. We were working with the DAO with Daniel here, and we also see a lot of, we have a really good and big DAO called Huobi DAO. This is Huobi start from the folk of Wire and mostly driven by the Chinese community. But after several iterations of products, they have gathered around several hundred people working in the DAO together to promote the continuous development and operation of the projects in the format of DAO. And surprisingly, it's very efficient, and it's very organized and getting more and more people into the community every month. And the second thing we found people are difficulties in collaboration in DAOs, mostly because of the sufficient and efficient tool support for people to use DAO. And also because the high cost of blockchain, especially the recent gas surge and the price surge on Ethereum. So we are trying to find more efficient tools in that direction, and more efficient solution in the infrastructure way in blockchain like layer 2 or sidechain like Chadai. And the third thing we see is that we found there's lack of sufficient tools to analyze what is happening in DAO. We know people have proposals on forums. We know people are doing voting with snapshots or Aragon, but what is that? There's not enough tools for people to track what is happening with those proposals and who work very actively on there, and what will be the proposal and the DAO goes to. So it's really glad to see that DeepDAO is working really good in that direction. And we also looking forward to work on more detailed features to bring those support to people working and collaborating in DAO with these kind of tools. Yeah, that's basically here. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you.
Epic. Cheers for sharing, Ruby.
Yeah.
And I guess with that, we can start moving to the panel Q&A. And I think I actually prepared the first question that looks like it would combine very well with James O'Donoghue's question. So that's a question for Eyal. I guess not only for Eyal, but I will start with Eyal, and it's a little bit of a controversial question. What's the difference between a multi-sig with rage quit function to a real DAO? And maybe, so what James is asking, if the framework of technical implementation for DAO is quite clear, what are the projects that we can look at as examples and how they choose their DAO governance models? So on the spectrum of DAOs, like what do you even call DAOs and how do you look at it, Eyal?
Okay, so this question has been around since the time DAOs started. And when we started with DeepDAO, I really felt that I need to answer this question. And so I came up with a definition that I was very proud of, that a DAO is a community of people that are working together and making decisions together. And these decisions are binding. So since they're on the blockchain, when the group is making a decision, the decision is being recorded somewhere. And there are actual consequences. Money, for example, goes from one person to another, or from the DAO to people. And again, I thought this was a very good definition, and it allowed us to be inclusive, so that even several people, when they're doing this, they're already a DAO. And I think this is a good definition, but it's probably not inclusive enough. So I've come to think of it as everything is a DAO. Every collection of people, when they come together and they start chatting together, and then they have some form of recording their decisions, it's already a DAO. And maybe the most general way to think about, and I think we do need to find a general definition that would include everyone. So if you're a community and you're on the blockchain and you have a coin together, or a token, then already there's a unifying principle that brings all of you together. And with that, you're already at the door of being a DAO. So for me, yeah, the question is not about whether it's a multi-sig or it's a complex infrastructure for making a decision, and whether there is a way to do repeating payment or an escrow, which are both features that are very much needed in the DAO space. And I hope they're going to be developed soon. For me, again, any community and with a unifying principle is already a DAO.
Cool. Matan, I know that you have interesting opinions on that question, so feel free to interject.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, on one hand, I agree to some degree. I agree with Eyal that anything could be a DAO, but I have two comments. One, I mean, also a community, just regular community way before the blockchain, under that decision, you would also call them a DAO. So I think if you just call everything a DAO, every collaboration a DAO, then maybe it's not really interesting, in the sense that you're now calling a DAO to the regular form that we are having. So the question is, what is new? So two comments on that, or two answers. One answer is that the special thing about the DAO is that there is some form, so indeed it is a community of people who have a shared interest. They want to promote something, whether it's for profit, non-profit, it doesn't matter. Whether they have a token or no, I think it doesn't matter. But they have a shared interest. They want to promote it. And the specialty of DAOs is that at least some core, maybe all of, I wouldn't say all, but at least the core part of their coordination is on-chain. So they could also do an off-chain coordination. They could also write in forums. They could also know each other. but the core of their business, the core of, at least of the value flow in that coordination, that collaboration, at least the value flow is carried on chain. So in that sense, it is decentralized. I think if that is not, if the value flow is not on chain, I wouldn't call it a DAO. Now, the question to the difference between a multi-sig and more sophisticated platform, in principle, I would say all of them are DAOs, but it's also a somewhat uninteresting answer, because then also 2 out of 3 would say it's a DAO, but we really it's not fitting to the intuition we have. So I think the answer is that you cannot avoid giving some. We don't like it because it's not binary answer; it's parametric answer. Like I would say that 5 out of 7 in a multisig is not a DAO. It's not interesting. By the way, even if you have 4,000 addresses voting, but 80% of the voting power is held by 3 people, I would say it's just as multisig. It's also not interesting. So I would say that DAO is effectively a situation where there is some size, there is a minimal size of group that is the minimal group that can control the funds. And so this will be my answer. And again, in principle, like mathematically, there is no distinction. There is no right number. Is this right number? Is 10? Is it 7? Is it 20? There is no right answer. You decide. Maybe it's 200. But if you just don't put that number, if you don't put that threshold, then you're inclusive. You have an inclusive definition, but I think it's less interesting in the sense that, well, maybe depending on what it should serve, but it's that interesting. It's less innovative. So I think the innovative part is, can you coordinate 20 people on chain? Can you coordinate 200 people on chain? Can you coordinate 2,000 people? Can you coordinate 20 million people on chain? Do you believe that we would coordinate 20 million people on chain in just a few years? I believe we do. And I think that's a totally new world that we're talking about. So now, you can include everything, but I think it's taking out the spectacular innovative part of what the vision of DAOs in a way. So that's my tendency, but it's a very personal.
Yeah. No, that's fair. There's actually quite a lot of nuances. I'd like to also share some comments shortly, but just to hear some different insights and angles from DAOs. Ruby, question for you, as I know that you've been very active in investing in different DAO activities. So when noobs ask, how can I invest and make money by investing in DAOs or DAO technology, what are the kind of mental models that you have? What would you suggest considering when thinking of investment in the DAO space?
Okay, thank you. I think I view there are 3 types of products or teams or projects who are looking into DAO areas. First is purely people organized in DAO, like DXDAO, or we have Reset DAO or Wi-Fi DAO in China here. They are organized in a DAO way, but working for a project. No matter what it might be a product for people to gain additional yield on chain. They can also be a product like an exchange or wallet, whatever. But the different thing is that people are organized in a way of DAO, and everything is open on chain, and their information flow, their capital flow is on chain. So for this type of projects, we are looking for 2 things. First is the DAO is a good thing. It's a good thing for them to have the whole organization to be open, transparent, and more important is to be continuous. People can come in and come out, but everything they contribute to this organization, to this product, will be remained within this organization and will be captured by the token or the projects we are invested in. And so, but the second thing is also very important for this type of project, that is the product itself and need to be sound, need to be a solid product. There need to be a product that people needed, and their commercial logic need to be sound and very good over there. So, and the third thing is that how is this DAO organized and how the rule of this DAO is set up. There's a lot of projects we're looking at. They said they are going to work in DAO, but still, a lot of things are pretty much just using the DAO name. So, those three key points is we are looking into for investment in projects that are best in DAO. So first, product. Second, people. Third, rules. And there are also two types of projects that are in the DAO space. One is a project like DAOstack or Evergo. They are very key infrastructure that to support the whole DAO area to working in. And in that part, we'll see two main key factors. One is if the team have a very good understanding about DAO. This is very important. Is because if without that, the product may be into the direction that not able to support the demand of people in the DAO space. Second is that if there is a sufficient efficient way to solve the current difficulties for people to collaboration on blockchain, we see several difficulties. We see is very hard to use purely full on-chain products and very expensive to use blockchain to do the collaboration, and there's not enough sufficient characteristics in the product that we want to use for specific organization targets, like how we can set up a small target within a small group of people, but this might be within the large group of rules, but they want some own features there. So we're seeing, and more importantly, how we can set up an organization very quick and open, freely, without permission, using those infrastructures. And third is about voting process. We avoid to say that DAO is all about voting, but it's definitely important for us to find an efficient way to solve the decision-making process in the DAO organizations. So those are the factors we're looking into the area that building themselves as DAO infrastructures in the DAO space. The third one is about the tools, like what Eyal is working on, DeepDAO. We see that is the first factor is also very important, is people need to understand about DAO. Second is that if those products would be able to incentive people in DAO to promote their own data automatically. And this is important, like that if you are building a product for DAO, it means that you are facing a large group of people and a large group of data. And that part, it's very important to find a way to incentivize people to contribute or participate into the product themselves. So yeah, this maybe I can share with people.
Cool, thanks, Ruby. Yeah, in summary, I think that some of the key interesting things that you mentioned there is that the innovation of DAOs is really in bringing transparency into the collaborative process. And when you're looking at assessing things to invest in, it's easy to just call it a DAO, but it's not always a DAO. And I see that Terry had a really interesting comment there, that some people in the Ethereum space are kind of patching DAOs, and he suggests maybe we could use an application environment like other blockchains. So I see Dfinity as an option for potentially something that supports better for maybe high throughput or stuff like that. I think also a comment that I've seen with the increasing adoption in stablecoins, and DeFi is right now super hot. We see that DAOs are often being used as diffusers. So people are kind of using DAOs to remove the direct regulatory risks. And by that, basically, instead of having like one person or team running the projects, they basically use several key holders or DAO members and allow them to collaborate on decision making. And sometimes it's not as clear how much really decentralized it is. Sometimes it's just kind of a proxy. So I don't know if it's only a technological matter. It's still, after all, human collaboration and prone to all the things that collaborative process, social process are involving. And I think that it's probably going to be something that the regulators will catch on in some delay of a year or two, as they usually do. And then we'll start hearing about really interesting DAO cases in courts. I guess, yeah, Eyal, maybe given the amount of data that you're seeing, I think it would be really cool to like maybe share some observations from the stuff that you've seen that are not widely known, and what are the kind of trends that you think are going to dominate the growth of the DAO industry in 2021?
Sure. So I think one of the things that definitely is worth paying attention to is what Ruby alluded to, that not everything is, if you're a DAO, it doesn't mean necessarily that you're decentralized. The infrastructure is decentralized. You know, we are on a blockchain, and the blockchain is decentralized as much as we can, as much as people can. But actually, when people come together and a community is working together, it depends on how much voting power each individual has and each group has. So if one person has 55% of the voting power, this community is not decentralized. And it doesn't need to be this binary. If 12 people have enough power to dominate all proposals and all decisions, and they all know each other and work with each other, then it doesn't even matter if the community has 1,000 people, because these 12 people or 5 people or 7 people dominate the interaction. And I think this is something that definitely DeepDAO has been paying attention to and monitoring, and looking at coalitions, which you can see on our dashboard. But I think, again, these kind of problems are problems that that humans have been dealing with for thousands of years. We don't really expect, I personally don't expect blockchains to solve all of them in the span of 2 years. So I think there's going to be a lot of, there's a lot of innovation going on in governance right now. And for example, if you look at Polkadot ecosystem, they're building in an executive council and a democracy and technical councils that are working on governance together, and all of them are making decisions, and it's kind of mirrors the way that separation of jurisdictions work in the real world. And I think this trend will continue, so that we're going to see a lot more elaborate type of governance. And I think that modularity is definitely something that's going to become more and more pronounced. And then if you're a community, you plug in a voting system, or you plug in a mechanism for chatting together. Maybe it's just chatting in text, or maybe it's a visual chat. And then you plug in other parts of the infrastructure that are even more granular, like an escrow, so that if the community decides to pay someone, that person or that group don't get all the funds immediately, and then they go off and they deliver or do not deliver. And then there needs to be a way for repeating payments, which is also something that is really important. And even beyond that, we don't know everything that's going on right now, and that really is going to serve people, because the car collectors are different than the real estate people, and the real estate people are different than activists, and activists are different than software developers. And so the use cases are very, very different than each other. And when you build a system, we're building the infrastructure, the basic building blocks. What I anticipate in the next couple of years is that each community would start needing a product, a DAO product that is a bit different than what other communities need. And then we'll start seeing products becoming specified and serving each community. So it goes beyond, again, there are certain features that are really necessary. You need to be able to make decisions quickly, and you need to be able to scale to a larger number of people. And you need to do it efficiently and not pay $50 for voting, for example, which is insane. So these are the basic features. And beyond that, and I think we're getting there with, XDAI or Snapshot becoming facilitating that. And beyond that, there's going to be a lot of diversification. This is my main prediction and my main hope, because we're going to need this diversification if we're going to allow adoption by more and more people.
Cool. Thanks for sharing, Eyal. Yeah, it's very interesting how with the developments in the DAO space, so both because people understand how to collaborate in DAOs and because the technologies are maturing. So whether it's XDAI, which is a side chain to Ethereum for those that don't know that, or it's Polkadot, which is a new blockchain ecosystem. All of those new technologies are coming and are enabling completely new use cases, or maybe like streamlining things that would otherwise be very difficult on Ethereum. So definitely. And Terry had an interesting comment about the fact that quite a lot of the activity is going through Infura, and Infura is well, it's not entirely centralized maybe, but it's still kind of controlled by an entity. So basically, what does it mean if eventually getting to participate in decentralized autonomous organization has to go through a centralized entity? There's quite a lot of open questions there. Maybe another question to Ruby. As someone that has seen many different DAO founders through their journey, and using different implementation. I know that you've been familiar with both DAOstack, Aragon, as well as others. So what do you think what are the factors that crypto entrepreneurs should consider when they choose a DAO framework for their project? What do you think is like a way to consider what's the best solutions? You were on mute.
So, yeah, sorry, I was muted. I think this is a very good question. And as we discussed before, I don't believe DAO stands for decentralized. For each different entrepreneurs and for each different product, they have their own tap table to go from a team-driven product to a community-driven or purely decentralized product. So when choosing a DAO framework, an entrepreneur need to first understand their target to use this framework, whether they are using this to organize their own team with financials and information flow going on blockchain, or if they are going to bring in more communities into the collaboration, and what kind of decisions are they going to make through the DAO platform? Are they going to make everything through the DAO platform, or they are going to make significant decisions like fund using or new features of products through those DAO platforms? After figuring out this question, I think they're all good stuffs and bad stuffs, or they're all pros and cons choosing different platforms. Actually, me personally use DAOstack and Aragon at the same time. For DAOstack, one thing I really like is the reputation system. And what's that reputation system is really helped me to control, or not control, it's really helped me to distribute the decision power to the people who is really work close with the DAO. They know what is happening with this project and this organization daily to day, and they can use their reputation to vote here to make the decision, and it's more efficient. Because you really don't want to that every token holder in your community to join into the voting or decision-making process, and I don't believe that's possible. And the good thing, that's what I really like about DAOstack. And the good thing about Aragon, that they provide different kinds of templates, and you can use a really, really simple one, without thinking about how you are going to make your rules, and then you can start over there. And after that, with some support from your developer, you can tweak and revise the rules of your DAOs and in bringing more people into the decision-making process or into the collaboration much faster. And the second way I use Aragon is for its fundraising and for its finance management tool. For those situations, for me, it's not simply a decision-making tool. It's more like a finance tool that we can help to make the whole financial transferring of the projects transparently and openly to all the community members through the blockchain. And we also see more tools like Colony, we see Moloch, each have their own merits and they have its own pros and cons, but just make it simple. Just go back. What is your target to use the DAO project? If you're going to just manage your funds, you choose the most efficient tool to manage funds. If you want to use that to involve more people for decision making and voting, and use the most convenient tools for people to vote over here. That's my experience.
Cheers. Thanks, Ruby. It's interesting actually to hear from someone who is a DAO practitioner that operates those different systems across different projects. I think that I can totally see a future like in the next year or two where this knowledge is becoming so valuable, and imagine how large firms and maybe the financial industry can start transforming itself into DAOs. This kind of knowledge is going to be super valuable. A question for Matan. As someone who's been kind of an OG in the DAO movement, and in many ways, people sometimes refer to DAOstack as the WordPress of DAOs, something that kind of you come and create your own DAO with just a few clicks and starts your own movement with the DAO. So I'm wondering, what are the kind of lessons that you've been through the iterations from starting Lazuz back, the ride sharing app, and then Backfeed, and with all of those iterations, what are kind of the sometimes the painful lessons that bring the wisdom to get you to where you are today, and what are the kind of amazing moments that you felt when you made progress and was able to make the impact that you did through your work today?
Okay, so yeah, what comes up to my mind, I can think of maybe four main lessons. Yeah, so basically, it boils down very much to my talk, because like it took me a long time to realize the need for a consistent and modular platform. So initially I had a previous company called Backfeed, and we produced products for DAOs. But then we realized that it's just too early. Well, we realized two things. Firstly, that almost every use case that we thought of needed something differently, but also that it's just too early. Like the protocols that we think is the best, the best protocol we can think of is just changing rapidly. And then in DAOstack, there was this understanding that we have to build a modular system, like that we wouldn't be able to, definitely not back then in 2014, 2015, 2016, but even now, I think it's very hard to build just a simple product that, I mean, I don't think it's impossible. I think you can, and we are doing that in common, but definitely when you see the landscape that is growing, it's clear that there is a need for a modular structure, because the needs are so vast and are also changing so rapidly. So that was one lesson, an old lesson. But then a newer lesson, which we learned this year, I think the last maybe year and a half, is that eventually users, they are not ready to compromise on UX. So they need to have, and even avid users, even technology users, even Ethereum users, if you give them a good UX, they use it much more. And many of them, if you don't give them a good UX, they wouldn't use that at all. So they need to understand it easily. It should be a simple, understandable, easy to use platform. And now that's the big challenge. How do you compromise those two very different needs? And I think you can, but it makes it much harder. So that's two lessons. Another two lessons is another tension, which is between the off-chain and on-chain. So in Backfeed, we did everything off-chain, but it wasn't real. You needed, and then the DAO came after Backfeed, and suddenly it exploded. And it exploded, well, for a bunch of reasons, bunch of good reasons that the DAO did it right, but one of them, it was real. Like, people were really excited that they're going to invest in something that is actually sitting on-chain and the whole community controls for real. So then we realized in DAOs that we don't want to experiment off-chain, we want to experiment on-chain. But then you can also take that too much, because many times you realize that it really depends on your audience and when and where, and sometimes you actually discover exactly the opposite. You discover that people are very much ready to explore with off-chain systems, or mostly off-chain systems, or semi-off-chain system, and Snapshot proved that a lot. And now Common is proving the same. Like, our users in Common don't really care if it's right now on-chain or off-chain. Now Common is going to be on-chain. It was developed on-chain, and now it's off-chain because we realize that the value gained for the users right now, the pilots, the delta is fairly low, whether it's on-chain or off-chain, but the cost to produce it and the UX that you get, the delta is pretty high. So we decided that for now, we're going to provide the same system off-chain and then mature up the technologies that are supporting it. And in 6 to 12 months, we'll be able to support the same level of UX and simplicity on-chain. So you'll be able to enjoy both. So I think this, again, it's like conflicting understanding of finding the right balance and when and where to insist on-chain versus off-chain. So this is like some random 4 lessons. I'm sure there are many others. In terms of excitement, yeah. So there is like, I can say these two things of excitement. Of course, when something gets big, like suddenly DXDAO. So DXDAO is 6 on DeepDAO platform, but to me it's 1, because if you really count the number, if you look at the size of capital times the size of active community, then DXDAO is 1 by far. An active community will be, for example, the size of the sample of members, which are, but again, I wouldn't count 4,000 as 4,000 if 3 are controlling dominate the DAO. So in some side, the typical size of the distribution, and time you can look at it by the times of activity. So if you look at 4,000 people, but then the activity is 0.2%, then it tells you something about the real size of the sample. So you need to define more complexly the size of the active, let's say, community. And if you take that size times the capital, I think DXDAO is by far the biggest. But I think there are a couple of others really interesting ones. So I think one thing which I really got excited by was when suddenly you start an experiment and suddenly it explodes. And that's exactly what happened in the DXDAO, and also exactly what happened with the DAO. And I think we are going to see, I'm willing to bet that we're going to see many such coming this year. So it will be very, very exciting. The other exciting thing is, and it's related, it's maybe the other side of the coin, is when things happen without you planning them. Because this is really what the DAO is about. So in DXDAO, we launched the DXDAO together with Gnosis. We've been working for a year to launch the DXDAO. And then we just let it go. We said, okay, it's not us. They live or die. It's not anymore going to depend on us. Like, we just launch it and that's it. And for almost a year, there was a quiet but insistent team of like 10 people that actually sat down and worked and produced products. They had 400 voting power holders or reputation holders, and a few more stakeholders. Sorry, not yet stakeholders. And they sat down and worked quietly. And a year after, we just launched a token sale. Like, that was the first token sale launched by a DAO. So it's unregistered, completely decentralized token sale, and it blew up. And they raised a bunch of millions very, very quickly. And now they're managing assets of $30 million. So I'm excited about that because nothing of that was planned. We just put the seeds for that to happen. And when just that seeds organically mesh up to to such a big collaboration, that is what DAO's about. So that's what I'm excited about.
Epic. Yeah, the DXDAO is a super exciting experiment, and it feels like even with so much traction that they have achieved, it's actually really early days. They're really working on amazing stuff. Maybe we'll continue with a couple of questions from the audience. So would we call the Swiss referendum a DAO system? And there was another question which was, is Bitcoin a DAO? Like basically maybe Bitcoin network is already the most successful DAO experiment. These are all kind of meta models for how to think of DAOs. But yeah, anyone wants to pick it? I guess, Eyal, with the definitions of on-chain binding decisions, do you have anything to share about it?
Sure. So the Swiss referendum, is a great example because it's a lot of people making decisions together, and these decisions are binding because they are bounded in the Swiss law, which I'm not an expert of, but as far as I understand, there is a legal framework for making these referendum and treating these decisions. So we can actually see an analogy there. The government would be the multi-sig that controls the funds, and the voting power is the voting power. And we have a DAO there. It's not on-chain, so it's not a blockchain DAO. And it's not realistic to actually, start a system of a DAO. But would the governance be interesting? Hell yeah! I mean, I would love to get information about the Swiss referendum system and put it on DeepDAO somehow. Why would we reject something like that? Now, let's think of Bitcoin, which also I'm far from being an expert of, but there's a lot of off-chain governance going on there. And this off-chain governance has a stream of decision-making. It's a streaming decision-making that eventually turns and becomes part of the protocol. So are we going to reject that system, which is an off-chain system, and then there's a way for making decisions, and then there is actual consequences in the real world, which is really the stream of decision that we're seeing in a DAO. So in some senses, this is a DAO, and in other senses, it's not. It's not necessarily a product that was built as a DAO, but yeah, it's people making decisions together, and these decisions are binding in some way. So this is my take on it. Again, it's a different system than DAOstack. It's a different system than Aragon. It's not something that you can plug and play. Not something that you can create a community around a token tomorrow and all of a sudden start having this kind of impact in the world. But it is something that is a model for people to work together and to communicate together. And this is something that, in this regard, it's interesting, and it is worth it to consider it as something that is a DAO.
Yeah, that's a good comment. I think that if we're looking at open source projects like Bitcoin or like Ethereum, quite a lot of the coordination around code base, for example, these things are mostly done off-chain. There's not really like on-chain element to the coordination or collaboration, besides eventually get the miners or the nodes to upgrade to a version or to do a fork or whatever, which is nice and stuff. It's soft governance off-chain, and then on-chain something is happening. I think that quite a lot of what we see with Polkadot and the examples that you gave about forming executive council, tech council, ecosystem committees, and those kind of things, is to take these activities that are typically done off-chain with, say, Ethereum governance, the EIP, or Bitcoin, and try to make it something that has treasury and has processes for how to do it in a more robust way as DAO organization, and by that really kind of extend the governance from purely the protocol level all the way to the social level. So this is definitely going to be super interesting, in my opinion. There was another interesting question there from Matt about the role of self-sovereign identity in DAOs. And I think that already some of the work that Matan and the DAOstack team has done on reputation system, and then Threebox, which is another identity-related project. And I know that, Eyal, the examples that you gave about profiles of DAOists and kind of like analyzing the individual activity of DAOists is something that taps into, in many ways, self-sovereign identity. So I'm wondering if you have anything to share about the role of identity as something that facilitates the growth of DAOs.
Yeah, I can take this. So, I don't want what I said earlier to sound as if I don't appreciate and look with wonder at on-chain data. I think on-chain data is extremely important. It's innovative and it's the next step. And in a way, it's what made me become interested in DAOs, and it's a huge thing. It's the next step for communities. I just believe that we need to, okay, we got this. Let's take another step and think about it in more broad terms. And in this way, the personal profiles that we're building, they have verifiable data. So it's not only that the infrastructure is decentralized, the actual human activity is becoming decentralized and verifiable. And I don't have, I'm not going to share the screen again, but you could see on the profiles that we're building, you can see the actual activity of each person, each individual. And all of a sudden you understand the social graph in a way that is not abstract, but it's very concrete. Because if people are members of the same DAOs, and if people are participating in the same proposals and the same votes, their connection in the social graph has consequence and has meaning that is very concrete. And I think this is a big thing for decentralized identities. The fact that you own and your address is associated with a person and is associated with actual activity. And the next step would be to actually connect multiple addresses to the same human, which is, a human in this regard is a collection of addresses. And it's a collection of addresses not only on Ethereum, it's also on Polkadot and on the Creed and other chains. And this is a fascinating entity. And then we can start talking about blurring the boundaries between collections of addresses, and I'm sure this is math stuff that would be fascinating for the next several years. So, in short, exciting stuff is happening.
Cool. Yeah, it's like the transition to really like have a cyber wilderness is step by step. Matan, did you want to interject? I see you unmuted.
Yeah. So I think the whole DAO story is about better alignment of interest, and that means better, like more, I guess, proportionate distribution of power and ownership. I'm not saying equal. It doesn't need to be equal, but it needs to be proportionate, like proportionate to the value that one's creating. And in particular, you would expect that at least, like at the minimum, you would own your identity, right? And what does it mean owning your identity? Owning in terms of the ability of someone else to sell your data, for example, without your approval. But also owning in terms of like being able to migrate. I want to take my my data and easily move on to another platform. I'm not locked, so I own the data. So I think, and it goes further and further. Like who owns the rights of the piece that I'm publishing on Facebook? I'm owning the post or Facebook. And generally, I think, and then the next step, it also goes to social graph that Eyal mentioned. I think the ownership of a social graph by a centralized entity, I think, is very dangerous. So eventually we're talking about better alignment of interest, better ownership and responsibility, by the way, of the members of the community, when we're talking about interoperability. So, the fact that the ownership is at the edges allows for a much greater interoperability between different platforms. So I think we're not yet imagining what would come about, but the fact that the infrastructure are decentralized, is also contributing for a better alignment of interest, but is also contributing for much more interoperability between platforms. So I think the platform of the future, the Web3, is going to be made of totally interoperable apps. Like you'd actually have your mobile, and inside one app you'll be able to jump to another app and to jump back to another app. They will interoperate with each other because they are based on interoperable or shared infrastructures. So what can be done, I think, is much more than what we are used to. We are used to closed gardens, and we will find a very new digital world. But it's critically that the ownership of the one's sphere, in some sense, is at the edge and not at the center of anything.
Cool. Yeah, I have maybe one last comment and question to close down the session. Something that really stick with me since 2019, that we had the first event in Shanghai, the DAOfest Shanghai. One of the founders of the first DAOs that ever existed, BitShares, I think it was, it's like the first ever stablecoin or something that was formed like a DAO. He told me something that really stuck to me. It's DAOs are an inevitable result of the startup era. And I mean, the startup era is kind of a way to do innovation and companies in a more agile way. And then like taking it even further is DAOs. And since then, like since I started getting into DAOs, it's very clear to me that everything is a DAO, like what Matan has shared. And one of the theses behind this DAOs steering innovation, something that I've seen in Matan's talk from like probably 3-4 years ago, there's this thesis that you can get the best of both worlds. Free market efficiency that comes with scale of organization, and the agility that comes with startup and innovation. So question on that would be, how much of this thesis is true and not aspirational only? And how far do we still have to go if we really want to see it reach? So, yeah, any comment on that, Matan?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so it's about really the marriage of liquidity and coordination. So we are used to coordination via structures, and structure by design are not liquid. And markets are very liquid, but they're unstructured and also uncoordinated because of that. Actually, they are coordinated. Price discovery is a coordination mechanism, but it's just a single coordination mechanism that then doesn't allow you to do more than just mere growth as a whole. So there is much more to that. So yes, I'm totally sure that it's true, and also I think we already see that, and that's basically that's all what crypto economics is. Like, and that's what blockchain are. Like, blockchain are an insane coordination, indirect coordination. That's also why it's liquid. So it's indirect. So the only way to resolve coordination and liquidity is by having indirect coordination via crypto economics. That's a solution, and blockchain already proved that. And I think there is an amazing in indirect coordination happening, but I think we see also already much more than that. Like if you look at Ethereum ecosystem, for example, if you look at the early DAOs that we have right now, such as DXDAO and others, and YFI, so I think it's already happening, and I think it's going to happen in a much accelerated pace. Like we are in an acceleration exponential curve, so it's very hard to see that you're an exponent. But once you see that you're exponent, it's like too late in some sense. You already on it. So, and I think the exponent is happening this year, probably starting to be acknowledged. I mean, probably the mainstream exponent you will see in next year and the year after, but I think people will start to recognize that we're on exponent this year. And of course, full maturance will take more time, but I don't think it's going to take 20 years, as some people say. I think it's going to take maybe 5 years. And even just as people today, I run, since I sort of like started early, people around me come when they want to buy, tokens, they want to buy Ether for investment, they come to ask me what to buy. Not because I understand anything, just because I'm known to be early, so that's why they ask. I don't know. That's not a good, maybe good to consult with me, because I don't have anything about investment. But still, I get those people come to me. So I think that just as the ordinary people today ask about Ether, and just as the ordinary people 2 years ago asked about Bitcoin, I think that the ordinary people will ask about DAOs in about 2 years from now. So I think that's where we're heading.
Yeah,
I think I agree with Matan. This is actually an interesting observation that someone came up with several years ago, Daniel, because actually when you look at DeepDAO, there are quite a few DAOs that are already startups. Startups, DeFi startups in this case, created infrastructure on a DAO. And so DAOs are, in a way, the way that startups manage themselves.
yeah,
that's what's real, what's there.
Yeah, in some ways, the experiment with DXDAO is that, and I mean, we see also DHDAO, which is a project that I'm working with and was on event before. We start seeing those organizations, like DHDAO is already becoming profitable soon, and it's an organization that is less than 1 year old, formed on a DAO, right? There's a lot of activities that are still early, but I agree also that like this trend is exponential, and it's reflected in the data that DeepDAO is uncovering. It's reflected in the activity that you see on DAOstack and Aragon's DAOs. And it's definitely only going to accelerate. Like I get a lot of friends from kind of past life of being an engineer that are going into entrepreneurship now, and many of them are, like, what's with this blockchain thing? I want to get into it. And you see how in a matter of a few months, smart people are picking it up and they're starting to get into crypto. I think it's inevitable that in the next, probably this year already, we'll start seeing more and more people getting into DAOs, just given the amount of DeFi projects that are like effectively relying on DAOs to run their activities. I think we can probably like tinker and chat about things for hours and hours. So I just cut it here before we're getting too drifted and leaving some taste for more. We'll probably get some more sessions another time. So for everyone that joined and also put questions together from the audience, thanks a lot for coming. And for the speakers, thanks a lot for making the time and sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, and all your journey in the crypto life that you lead. Keep pushing, keep developing it. Thanks for the impact that you're doing. And let's stay tuned. You can follow on social media. You can get the recording of this event later. And yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Cheers.
Thanks, Daniel.
Bye-bye.
Bye.